I want to share with you that when you have high retention, not only is your practice full of these people, but this is what happens to a practice when every year you are keeping your patients. Meaning you're not turning and burning. You're not replacing people you've lost. You're just continuously adding people to the practice and not losing them. This is not a get rich overnight thing. This is a get wealthy over time thing.
Hello, I'm Holly Jensen. Thanks for joining us today. Today we are going to be going over increasing revenue and retention in a chiropractic practice. With me today is founder and CEO, Dr. Miles Bodzin. We have a lot of content to cover because we want to make sure you guys leave today with a sense of confidence of like, hey, I can do this. There's things available. I can implement things right now to help my practice thrive and help my patients get better clinical outcomes. So we're just going to dive right into it. So Dr. Bodzin, take it away.
I was going to ask is, am I coming through loud and clear? I was muted. So thanks, Holly. I appreciate that. And looking forward to sharing today. We are excited to share this material today about increasing revenue and retention. And you know, we've been doing this now for a long time. I was actually reflecting this morning as, you know, brushing my teeth, getting ready for the day. And I was actually reflecting, wow, we've been doing this over 20 years now of teaching this stuff. And it still holds true today. The principles and the things we're going to share with everybody today, it's not something we came up with yesterday. This has been tried and true, literally with thousands and thousands of practices now who have applied this stuff. And we're going to share with you some of that stuff today in regards to how you basically increase retention. I know I'm kind of going out of order here, but I'll just share, you know, I was reflecting again, I'm sure we all do this, you know, you brush your teeth, you're having your cup of coffee, or in the morning you're thinking about things. And it just dawned on me, like in the career we've had, helping so many people. I mean, we've literally helped, I didn't mean in my own personal practice, of course, thousands of people, but through what we are doing and what we're helping you with guys today, I'm so happy that we've literally helped thousands of doctors, but what that means is we've literally helped tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of patients through all these doctors. And it just warms my heart that, you know, we get to keep doing this. So Holly, thank you so much for working with me all these years. And
oh my gosh, my pleasure. You're welcome. And I'm glad that you bring that up because, you know, at the end of the day, chiropractors, like, you didn't go to school to learn the business side of things. You went to school and became a chiropractor to change lives, to make an impact, to leave a legacy. But you're running a practice, so there's business stuff that goes with it. And that's what we're here to help do. And that's how we've been able to help other chiropractic practices thrive, regardless of the type of practice they are. We help practices of all types.
My picture's probably about 10 years old in that photo there. Anyway, it reminds me of the real estate agents, right? Who you see their ads of the real estate agent, and they show up at your house and they look nothing like the picture in their ad. Anyway, point being is this, where my brain went is that it's not about the revenue, and retention is not about money. Retention is about getting better clinical results. I think we could all agree that with chiropractic especially, and that's who our audience is today, we're speaking directly to our fellow chiropractors, and that is patients need to follow a treatment plan to get results. Doctor, when you meet your new patient and you know you could help them, that is dependent on them showing up. That is dependent on them following through. That is dependent upon them doing their part. And in order for you to get the best clinical results with your patients, I think we could agree we need people showing up. So when we talk about increasing retention, it's not about money, although money is a great benefit of this. It's about getting better clinical results. And I start with that because, you know, again, the topic of money and insurance and cash and all that, it's great and everything, but we went to school to help people. That's why we became chiropractors. And I know when I speak with doctors one-on-one and we really get chatting about like the deep challenges they're facing, if they're facing any, it always comes back to is their frustration over patients dropping out early, that poor retention. That's probably maybe what drove you to attend today's webinar. So let's get into the material today and really kind of dive into this. Being that we're going to be talking about some topics, I don't even know if this all really applies per se, all of these disclaimers, but as a general rule, this topic is a educational purpose. We're not here saying that you should charge certain fees or any of that kind of stuff. The real one I want to point out is probably number 4, and that is I'm going to be showing you some examples of stats showing what changes happen in offices. And ultimately, those stats are a reflection of that specific office. And we generally see this across the board with our members when they apply the principles we're teaching. But it's up to you to actually do this stuff. It's not us doing it for you. So that being said, let's get into today's material. What is one of the leading causes of patients not getting the full benefits of care? And I'll tell you right now, it's not that you don't know how to be a great chiropractor. It's not that you haven't gotten the right technique. It's not that you don't have good adjusting skills. The reason patients don't get the best clinical results is one thing, and that is premature dropout. And I already kind of alluded to this in the introduction here, saying that patients require following through. It's like if you're recommending 3 months of care, or 2 months of care, or 6 months of care, whatever your treatment plan is in order to get clinical results, if patients drop out prematurely, I think we could agree that's a cause of them not getting the best clinical results. And the challenge facing chiropractors today is simply this: it's poor retention. And I know many doctors have a heroin addiction right now to what is the best way of getting new patients. What's the new marketing gimmick? Is it AI? Is that the new trend of getting new patients? Is it Facebook advertising, or is that old school? Is it email? Like, how do we get new patients? Like, that is the marketing, that's the heroin addiction I use as an analogy that we all have, right? I need more new patients. Why do you always need more new patients? Well, I think we could agree it's to replace the ones you've been losing. And if you didn't need new patients, like if you had plenty of retention, how good would it feel to you that you don't have to worry about where your next new one's coming from? Like, imagine what that would feel like. And I'll share, and I could tell you what that feels like, because in practice, I remember, and Holly could speak to this, and that is, there was a time where I said, no more new patients. I want to take a vacation in practice. I don't want to leave. I just don't want to work so hard. So for the next few months, any new person who calls, either push them out a few months or send them somewhere else. And the reason we could do that was we didn't need new patients financially in the practice. What I mean is most practices need new ones in order to keep the revenues up. That if new patients fell off a cliff, meaning you weren't getting new patients, suddenly your revenues would drop. So as a business, you obviously need the revenues. Holly, do you want to speak anything to that regard?
I do, because I really remember that story so vividly. Not that story, but that time in practice, like, you just seeing that look on your face. You were just exhausted, and you came in and we're like, oh gosh, what's going on? And you're like, no more new patients for the next several months. And my initial reaction was like, oh, what do you mean no more new patients? But then it took me a moment to realize, like, we were not dependent upon new patients showing up in order to have revenue still coming into the practice. And I remember, sharing that moment with other CAs, and their, jaws hit the floor, like, oh my gosh, how did you guys do this? Like, that's a scary thing. How could you go without new patients for months on end? And it's because we had built the practice with high patient retention. So we were not dependent upon new patients showing up in order to have revenue coming in. And it really makes it a more joyful place to work when you're not in a situation where you're dependent upon new patients showing
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Holly. And from the standpoint of, like, how's that feel? I'm not saying you don't want to see new patients. I'm not telling you or advocating for you, doctor, not to see new patients. I'm just simply saying is when you could take your foot off the gas of always marketing and always looking, it's a nice way to wake up in the morning, just personally. And when Holly says it brings you more joy and pleasure, absolutely it does. It's a nice way of taking vacation in practice. So what does poor retention cost your patients? I'll tell you what it costs. It costs them results. It costs them getting their problem solved. It costs them having recurring pain. It costs them not being able to play with the kids. Like, all of what it costs them. Like, when patients don't get the full benefits of the care, you as a doctor know. In fact, you've probably had patients come to you who are returning to you after they got care for a while, then dropped out, and then they come back in and they've had flare-ups again because they didn't solve the problem. It's really costing your patients and their families tremendous stress in their life because of the fact that they're dropping out early. And I'll often say this, like, doctor, you went to school for years to learn to be a great chiropractor, to learn to adjust, all of the skills you have. And you did that so you can get great results with people. And if you would agree with me that one of the reasons, if not the most common reasons, patients don't get the best results is not because you don't know how to adjust, because I'm sure you do. It's because they don't follow through. Then wouldn't it make sense for you to learn what it takes to help people follow through? Like if you put all that time and energy to learn to be a chiropractor, you should put some time and energy into what does it take to help people follow through with care. Because if you do that, and then you combine it with all the other skills that you have, you become a rock star. You get great results with your patients. So I'm really advocating for you doctors to really pay attention to the things we're about to teach you from the standpoint of patients following through, because that's what we're going to show you. There are some key things you could be doing, and I bet you think one of them right now is, well, I just have to educate my patients, right? That's what we've all been taught. If patients knew what I knew, they would do what I do. I bet you've all heard that, right? You educate them, they get, they understand the power of chiropractic and they follow through. And I got to tell you, how's that been working for you? I got to ask you that. Like, how's that been working for you to educate your patients and yet they're still dropping out? Like, do you have patients who know, absolutely know they shouldn't smoke, but yet they still smoke? Do you have patients who know they should be eating better and don't? Do you have patients who know they should be exercising more, yet they don't? Like, there's more knowledge today than there's ever been, yet people's behaviors are no different. So my point is that there is more to patients following through than simply them understanding the value of chiropractic. There's more to it. And that's what we're going to reveal to you guys today. And doctors, what is it costing you for poor retention? Like you and your practice, what damage is it creating in your life? What stress is it creating in your life? Are you always wondering about your next new patient? Are you breathing down your CA's necks, wondering like, hey, where are the recalls? Why are there no new patients on the books? Are you constantly stressed about finances? Those things that are you not able to take a vacation? Like all of that stuff is a result of poor retention. Like if your practice had, think of your practice right now and you look at all of the inactive files on in your practice and you said 10% of those were actually still coming in on a regular basis, you'd probably be plenty busy. You'd probably have plenty of revenue. You wouldn't have to worry about where you're getting your next new patient. Like it's costing you stress. And it really behooves you to pay attention and focus on what we're going to share with you today. Here's the thing we've seen. Now, I've studied a lot of practices. I've been in the fortunate position now to have worked with well over 6,000 offices. And in looking at these practices and seeing what's going on, we see one thing they have in common that these successful, high profit practices and cash-based practices actually have in common. And that is they have the opposite of poor retention. They have high retention. We see this in the practices that are successful. They have this as a common thread. Now, are there practices without high retention that are successful? Of course there are. There are practices that are focused on work comp or PI and those types of practices, and they would be considered successful practices, but they're not based on high retention. What I'm referring to is these practices that the most common thing we see is they have very good patient retention, very good high PVAs in their practices. In fact, a high retention practice, patients are 80% more likely to choose you over a competitor. They're twice as likely to recommend you to others, so twice as likely to get referrals, and they're likely to spend twice as much in your practice than had they not been a what we call a loyal patient to your practice. So what makes a patient loyal to you? That's another way of thinking about it, that when someone is sticking with you, when they're following through, another way to think of that is that that patient's being loyal to you in your practice and they're not dropping out. And what I did back in the day when I was learning this stuff was I went through some struggles in practice where patients weren't being loyal, where I invested in them, educated them, all of the things I needed to do to have them follow through, and yet they'd still drop out. And I went on a study, on a mission. How do I solve this? Because I was doing all the things that you were taught to do, educating my patients, doing workshops, doing all the things that we were led to believe would lead to patients following through. And I was frustrated that they weren't. So I spent a few years really studying behavioral psychology and what drives our patients to do the things they do. And I landed upon 4 things that I learned in studying my patients. And when I say studying my patients, I literally interviewed them. On camera, I would say to a patient, we'd set up a camera and interview them, saying, John, you've been here for 2 years. Why are you still coming in? I'm really curious what drives you to be here. Hey, Mary, you've been coming in, and the way you pay for care, has that had any influence on you coming or not coming? If you were doing it different, how would that impact you? Like, we really ask deep questions to figure out what drove their behavior. And we distilled it down to 4 things. Loyal patients need frequent contact. So we're talking about a person who becomes loyal to your practice. This is the high retention practice. One of the things we identified, they need to hear from you frequently. We mistakenly think we need to educate our patients. Yes, we need to educate them, but what's more important is that they're hearing from us on a regular basis. That's much more important than what the actual content is. Now, don't get me wrong, content is important. I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just trying to emphasize the point that it's the frequency. A once a month newsletter is not enough. An email once a quarter is not enough. Like, they need to hear from you regularly. That's through social media, through emails, through newsletters, you name it. They need birthday cards. They need to hear from you frequently. Otherwise, they forget about you. Number two is loyal patients. They need feedback. They need to know through the course of care how they're doing. They need to know, are they making progress, especially once they're feeling better. I think we could all agree there's a point in a treatment plan where people start feeling better. And if your goal is for someone to continue care beyond that point, because the goal of care is bigger than just symptom improvement. The goal of care in your practice is maybe restoring a cervical curve or improving posture or functional movement. Whatever the goal of care in your practice is, we could agree that if it's beyond symptomatic improvement, there's a period of time where the patient's receiving care and there's no symptoms for them to use to gauge how they're feeling or how they're doing, I should say. So you must give people regular feedback as one of the things we identified. So that feedback also needs to be done in a way that makes sense to a person. And I'm going to show that to you. Number three, patients need number three, frictionless payments. Okay, frictionless payments. They need the payment experience to be frictionless. It needs to be smooth, easy, not difficult. And this is really common today. I mean, we're all used to now in today's world having our credit card on file on things like that's really normal behavior. Back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a little less common for this stuff. And we found that making the payments frictionless really skyrocketed the retention. It skyrocketed it tremendously. Number four, loyal patients need their care forecasted. We refer to that as forecasting care. What that means basically is they need to know the future. They need to know what they're signing up for. Is this 3 months? Is it 4 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? What are their financial obligations? What is their treatment plan obligations? Like, they need to know right up front what they're getting themselves into. And if any of you have not done that with your patients, like you've kind of done the model of, hey, let's get you started with care. I'll reevaluate you next month and we'll take it from there. Meaning, in a report of findings, you're telling the patient you're just going to see them for a short period of time and then kind of let them know as things go on. That is not a good example of forecasting care. A good example would be, hey, Mary, you're going to need to be here 6 months or 3 months or 4 months. Now, let me also let you know, there's a proper way to communicate that to people so it doesn't freak them out, which is beyond the scope of what we have time to deal with in today's webinar or go through in today's webinar. But in training, we teach doctors, how do you get someone to commit to 6 months, 8 months, a year, or 3 months, whatever it is, in a way that feels right to you as the doctor, as well as feels comfortable to the patient. So there's a way to communicate that. I'm just simply saying, kind of brass tacks, bottom line, you need to make sure patients know what their future is. And we refer to these as the 4 Fs, the retention principles of the 4 Fs. 4 Fs, it's an easy way to remember it. That's why we call it that. Frequent contact, write these down, docs, or take a picture or screen capture this page. Frequent contact, feedback, frictionless payments, and forecasting care. Those 4 principles are what drive your patient's behavior to stay under care. If you're not doing all 4 of these, it's why your retention is not as good as it should be. Like, for example, many chiropractors I speak with are great at the frequent contact. They're great at patient education and being in contact with the patients because they love marketing and all of that stuff. But asking about their re-exams and feedback, terrible. Asking about their payment systems, terrible. Asking about how good they are at forecasting care, not great. Or we talk to a doctor where they're really good at forecasting care, but they're terrible with frictionless payments. Like, they're trying to sell everybody a prepay program. Like, that's their model, is to get everybody to prepay. And meanwhile, that's not what most people do in their normal life. So you wonder why you have to learn how to be a salesman. Like, there's a lot of things into these 4 things. So I emphasize, if you were to leave the webinar right now, which I don't want you to do, but if you were, these are the 4 things you need to take away. That throughout the course of caring for a patient, all 4 of these, frequent contact, feedback, frictionless payments, and forecasting care, must be applied in order for you to skyrocket your retention. I've yet to see a practice that has high retention that's not doing all 4 of these. That the highest retention practices are doing all 4. The 4 F's, again, feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. So what we focus on is doing these throughout seeing a patient. So to create a loyal patient loyalty, to create loyalty in your patients, we apply the 4 F's throughout what we call a loyal patient journey. Now, we call it that because, well, every patient is on a journey. Every one of our patients who comes to see us is on a journey, whether it be 1 visit, 10 visits, or a year. The question is, does that journey lead to them becoming loyal to you in the practice? Because some people will come in for a couple of visits and then you never see them again. Some people will come in for 6 months, drop out, and you won't see them for years. Like, what is the journey that you're applying in your practice, and what does it lead to? So we've outlined this. We've actually identified there's 11 key steps to creating a loyal patient. You'll see here on this game board, or this map we like to refer to as the loyal patient journey, 11 steps. Step 1, 2, 3, all the way through number 11. And each of those steps identify things you need to be doing along the journey of seeing a patient for them to become loyal to you and your practice. In that journey, you'll see danger zones. Danger zones. What do those represent? You see I have them highlighted on this slide here. The dangers represent the most common places patients drop out. It's the most common places we lose patients. And we've taken the time to figure out, are there common places that we lose people? And yes, there are. What's the reason we lose those people? And how do we stop that from happening? So we've identified, like, if you lose someone between steps 3 and 4, why did that happen? And what can you do to avoid that? If you lose someone commonly between step 4 and 5, what causes that? And what can you do to alleviate that? And we'll share with you a resource where you can go and learn all that information. We'll share with you a resource shortly where you can go visit a page where it shows, you can click on the dangers, you can click on them, and it'll identify. Holly, did you want to say something as you jump on?
I do, because doctors and CAs, especially, I was at CA in Dr. Bodzin's practice many years ago for a long period of time. And, I've trained CAs, I've seen CAs come and go, and I know you guys deal with that too, because we work with your practices. And there's a lot of key points throughout the patient journey where your CAs are responsible for helping your patients stay the course of care, right? It's not all everything to do with the
100%.
doctor. Like, it is a team focus. And for me, when I first started as your CA, my weakness was financial conversations with patients, awkward financial conversations. And this is why one of the 4 F's is a frictionless payment experience, because the more often that you remind your patients about the money, the more often that you have these awkward financial conversations with your patients, or if you have a CA who was like me or many of you out there, you just, like, it's so uncomfortable. You want to throw up, right? Having that conversation. That's one of these danger zones, by not having a team who is able to handle these financial conversations. So not all of this is just what the doctor's responsible for to help the patient stay the course of care, but what your team is responsible for. And that's because it really is a joint effort. It's not just you, it's not just me, it's us.
Absolutely. And you'll see on the journey here, there's 3 characters. There's the CA, there's the patient in the red shirt, and then there's the doctor over here. All right. So you see the 3 characters representing the different roles of the team, helping that patient manage through the journey. And so that by step 11, they are loyal to you and your practice. That's ultimately the aim here. And we've identified, I learned something, and kind of as a side note, I'll mention, I learned in the art of goal setting that when you do goal setting, one of the things that's really helpful in setting goals is to then set what you don't want to have happen. Like, you eliminate all the don'ts so that it narrows down the do's. Well, this journey here, the dangers are kind of the don'ts, right? Identify all of the don'ts and learn how to neutralize those. Because I'll tell you, doctors, when we talk with you and we hear what you're doing, many of you are doing the don'ts. Many of the don'ts are happening and you're just not aware of them. So just becoming aware of them so that you can eliminate them, remove those subluxations from the process in your practice, And lo and behold, just that alone will start improving retention. And then you start adding in the 4Fs. You remove the don'ts and you add in the 4Fs, and suddenly retention really starts to skyrocket.
Yep.
So enough introducing it, let's kind of get into this. We're going to kind of go through a little pyramid here, kind of outline kind of the flow of these things. Ultimately, we want you and your patients to have success. That success is represented as the patients following through with care, enrolling in care, obviously, and following through with care. That success is you, doctor, having a practice full of patients doing this, having the financial freedom, all of those things. That's what the word success represents in this diagram we're going to go through here. How do we have that success? That is through retention, as we've been sharing with you. We are advocating for you and your patients that the better your retention, the more likely you're going to have that success in practice. We just got done introducing this loyal patient journey, that ultimately this journey will lead to patients becoming loyal. And when you do this with enough people in your practice, eventually you'll have hundreds of loyal patients giving you that high retention practice. So think of these as each building on the one below. That journey represents what you do with the individual patient. And when you do that with lots of patients, then you will have on top of that a practice that has high retention. And if you've done that properly, very top, you'll have success associated with that. I mentioned to you a resource. Write this down or take a screenshot of this, or go ahead and scan it with your phone if you're using your phone, or whatever you want to do. Loyalpatientjourney.com. That's the web page you can go to that will walk you through the loyal patient journey. There's videos you can watch. If you click on the dangers, that's where we identify and share with you what are those dangers, how do you resolve them. I mentioned there's going to be a free resource for you. That's the free resource. There's actually a place on there, actually, if you'd like to download a copy of the loyal patient journey, the actual PDF of the document, feel free to do that if you'd like to do so. Make note of that. I'm not going to show this again, so if you want this, go ahead and screen capture it right now, and then you can come back to it later. Loyalpatientjourney.com, and that will walk you through the 11 steps of the loyal patient journey. Nothing to buy there. It's totally free. It's a free resource for you to go through and learn how to actually apply this in your practice. Going back to the journey now, what makes it successful, it's based upon the 4Fs. It's based upon feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. That's what makes this journey become a loyal patient journey. So it's built upon those 4 principles. We apply those 4 principles throughout the entire course of seeing a patient, and ultimately it leads to a journey that creates loyalty, which leads to a practice with retention, which gives you that success. Now I'm going to focus, I'm mentioning these first 2 in the middle, forecasting care and frictionless payments. The reason I'm highlighting those is because I want you to notice that they're in the middle. They kind of support the majority of the weight. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because they have the greatest impact on your retention. Not all 4 of them have an equal impact on retention. We've identified that forecasting care and frictionless payments have the greatest impact on your retention. So if you're going to start anywhere with doing things in your practice, those are the areas you want to master and get good at first, because they will have the greatest impact on what's going on in the practice. Your patient retention, or your PVA, if you want to think of it that way, is significantly impacted by your forecasting, which is care planning basically, and how frictionless you make your payments. Those 2 things have a significant impact on your retention. I want to go through some examples to show you different types of forecasting and different types of collecting money, and what we typically see as the PVA associated with that business model and practice. So as we go from the bottom up, starting with the bottom will be the most friction. As we go to the top will be the least friction. So starting at the bottom is a per visit forecasting. What we're saying here is, doctor, that the patient only knows they have 1 visit coming up. Like each visit, they don't know anything about the future other than you saying, all right, I'll see you another visit. It's basically visit to visit. And in these practices, most offices collect money on a per visit basis, meaning a copay or their cash fee, they're not their cash fee, their cash payment on a per visit basis. We typically see the PVA of these practices stuck around 12. No matter what else they do, they are stuck around a ceiling of about 12 visits in that practice. Now, there's a way to improve that, and that is if you're doing a per visit model, or you have patients on a per visit case, instead of having them stop at the desk and make a payment every time, the better thing to do is have them sign an authorization letter that gives you permission to automatically charge them for that visit. Let me repeat that. Instead of having them stop at the front desk and pull out their wallet and make a payment, instead of doing that, have them sign a form authorizing you to automatically charge them for that payment each time they come in. at a minimum, that's what you should do for these people. Now, I'll also say we all have pay-per-visit patients. Even if you're doing one of the other business models that I'm about to show you, there's still occasionally those people who are paying per visit. So for anybody in your practice paying per visit, our best practice recommendation is sign an authorization form that gives you permission to automatically charge that payment each time they come in. Number 2, exam to exam. This is the doctor who's telling a patient, I kind of mentioned this earlier at a report of findings, let's get you started with care. I'll see you for the month. I'll reevaluate you next month, and we'll quote unquote take it from there. That they don't know if there's care beyond that first progress exam. And then every progress exam, the doctor is then telling the patient, do they need more care? And generally, these offices sell their care in what we call blocks of visits, like 10 or 12 visits at a time. They're selling their services or having people pay for their services with enough care to get them to the next progress exam. So you're a new patient, the patient signs up for 10 or 12 visits, they have a progress exam, and at that progress exam, you then tell the patient they still need more care, and the patient has a decision to make about buying more care. So every progress exam, the patient has a decision to make whether they purchase more care or not. And what we find in these practices, usually patients drop out after 2 or 3 progress exams, and the PVAs get stuck around 24 to 36 visits, simply because you're asking the patient over and over, do they want to buy more care? That's really what it comes down to, is it's a repeated financial decision that they have to make. Do they want to buy more care? So we don't recommend you use this for new patients at all. This is a good model for a specific type of a patient. And that is the patient who cannot follow a regular treatment plan, but they want to come in regularly on their own. We all have those patients, right? They come in twice this week, they miss a week, then they come 3 times, and then they miss for a few weeks and they come back. Like, they come haphazardly. For that person, this is a good business model for them to buy blocks of visits. However, what we recommend you do, like the pay-per-visit model, we suggested you have the patient sign a form to allow you to automatically charge for that visit. With the block of visits, you have them sign a form that basically says you're going to automatically charge them for each block as they expire. Meaning, let's say you sign up for 10 visits at a time. Basically, that means is they buy the 10 visits. At the end of the 10 visits, you're not asking them about the next 10 visits. You're just automatically charging them for the next 10 visits because it's meant to go on an ongoing basis. So that we refer to as kind of an auto-renewing block of visits, but it's only for people who are self-managing their care. It's not for doctor-directed treatment plans. It's not meant for the patient where you're having a person commit to a specific treatment plan. It's meant for that airline pilot who comes in whenever they feel like it. That's who it's meant for. Next is a care plan. The care plan, this is the traditional treatment plan. You've recommended 3 months of care, 6 months of care, 8 months of care, a year of care, 60 visits over the course of 8 months, 5 progress exams, a set of orthotics, nutrition, a cervical traction unit. Like, you've put together a comprehensive program of care, laser therapy, traction, whatever it is you do in your practice, it's all laid out right up front so the patient knows what they're committing to. And one model that's often taught is to have people prepay for those. Now, the challenge with this is that when you have to get people to prepay, there's a small percentage of people this works really well on, like 5 to 10% of patients. What I mean is that if you survey people, you'll find most people do not make their decisions based upon a prepaid amount. Most people make their decisions based upon a monthly amount. Think about how people purchase cars, for example. Most people do it based upon what they can afford per month. That's how they make their decision. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because if you're in the model of trying to get people to prepay, this is where I said before, you have to learn to be a salesperson. You have to learn how to sell people on doing something they don't normally do. What we find in these practices, because their re-sign rate is terrible. This is one thing I see when I consult with doctors who do lots of prepays. They're good at signing people up, but their re-sign rate is in the toilet. It's not great. Most people do not renew. And this is why their PVAs, yes, they're high, 50 to 75 generally, but they don't go much higher than that because most of those people do not stick with them long term. So just like all the other models here, they always need new patients. These practices tend to be like high volume, always get marketing to get new patients, always, signing up people, but they're always losing people on the back end. The next is the care plan. Again, you're still recommending care, but the collection method is different. In this case, it's on a monthly auto debit. It's on a monthly subscription. It's on a monthly payment, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter what you call it. The point is that there's a total cost to the program, and you just split it into monthly payments, or maybe you did a larger down payment with smaller monthly payments. But the point is there's a monthly recurring payment that's automated. And in these practices, we see the highest PVAs, 125, 150 plus. We see a really high retention with these practices. In my own personal practice, my PVA is well over 300. It was extremely high because most of our patients were on this monthly payment. Holly, did you want to say something about this? You're muted.
With our name being Cash Practice, a lot of doctors assume that like we're really into prepays, we teach prepays, and that's actually not it. Prepays are not the answer to high retention or increased revenue. What Dr. Bodzin just outlined, I don't want to like, make light of what you said. Care plans combined with monthly auto debits speak the financial love language of your patients. Most of your people are wanting to do some sort of monthly payment that they can incorporate into their monthly household budget. And that really is the secret sauce to high retention and high revenue.
Absolutely.
It's not about being a high volume office. It is not about that. It is about high retention, keeping the patients that you add into your practice month after month, year after year. That's what we're advocating here. And you guys, I know we're at almost 40 minutes after the hour. Stay tuned because Dr. Bodzin's about to show you how easy you can incorporate care plans and monthly auto debits into your practice. So
absolutely. And if any of you have experienced, trying to do this in the past and you were met with challenges, I get it. It's if you're used to doing insurance, and by the way, don't let our name fool you. We work with most of our offices do insurance as well. So don't let the term cash practice make you feel like it has to be all cash. Point I'm getting at though is that there's a method to learning how to present care plans in a way that it works easy. We've had many doctors come to us who have struggled with this in the past, and then they learn our methods and they have great success doing it. In fact, I'll share that with you. Here's a picture from my own practice. This is back in the day when Polaroids were the picture, not digital pictures. But you see a wall full of smiling faces. You see a wall full of it's a wall like Facebook, right? It's a whole wall full of people smiling, showing 50 adjustments, 100, 200, 300. And if you were in that practice, you would see went all the way up to 800 visits of people who are smiling and being celebrated for sticking with their care plans. And this was a fun thing to do to celebrate with people as they reach their different goals throughout care. I want to share with you that when you have high retention, not only is your practice full of these people, but this is what happens to a practice when every year you are keeping your patients. Meaning you're not turning and burning. You're not replacing people you've lost. You're just continuously adding people to the practice and not losing them. This is not a get rich overnight thing. This is a get wealthy over time thing. Here's a practice that all the way back to 2008, they've been using our systems and learning what we teach here since 2008 as an example, and they've been a member since 2007. So you'll see here their first year, a full year with us, they did $142,000 in cash collections. That's what this represents, their annual cash collections. This is not their insurance proceeds. This is just the money they're collecting from patients. And I think the graph speaks for itself. Every year that went by, you see their revenues continue to increase. Whereas in 2021, they did 2.2 million. That's tremendous growth over the course of time. Why does it take time? Because it takes time to add people to the practice, not lose them, continue to add people. And over time, that practice continues to grow and grow. Here's another example. Doctor since 2012, where their first full year here, they did 1.1 million, and by this most recent year, they did 2.4. And these graphs speak for themselves. Every year continuing to grow. Every one of these is a different practice, adding patients to the practice and not losing their patients. And again, look at this one. They went from 1.8 million in 2017, where 2021, they went all the way to 4.3 million in cash revenues. Now, I'm not saying that's you and your practice. Maybe you'd be happy doing 800,000 a year or 700,000 a year or $1 million a year or 500,000 a year. The point is that no matter what level you want to be at, you simply add people, don't lose them, and the practice grows. I'll just share with you real quickly, we did a study back in 2020 of what happens when people are on recurring payments versus one-time payments. You remember in 2020, there was a big shutdown, right? There was a big shutdown during COVID, right? When that happened, we saw pay-per-visit payments drop by 50% overnight. Within a month, 50% decrease in collections across thousands of practices. We saw one-time payments drop by 50%, whereas their monthly auto debits reduced by less than 3%. What I mean is that during the shutdown, when things were stressful and out of your control, revenues were still strong if you had people on a monthly recurring payment. If your practice was strictly on one-time payments, you saw a devastating drop in your collections in your practice. So it behooves you, it protects you to make sure you have lots of people on these recurring payments. It increases your cash collections is really what it comes down to. Now, great systems. We're going to transition now for a moment here into how do you do this? How do you systematize it? How do you put it into practice, as Holly was alluding to? Well, we say great systems are a set of procedures based on clearly defined set of principles that determine how you do something. Well, we just got done sharing with you there's 4 key principles. The 4 F's: frequent contact, feedback, frictionless payments, and forecasted care. Those are the 4 principles, and we want to have systems to do those things. When you systematize it, then it becomes part of the practice. So let's talk about those systems just briefly here. Feedback has a wellness score. That's a tool I'll share with you. We offer a care plan calculator, an auto debit system, and a drip education system. Those 4 systems were designed with purpose in mind. They were designed to execute that principle. That principle was being applied in order to have a successful journey. That journey leads to retention and success. So the practical, the get your hands dirty, the thing you show up in the practice and do on a day-to-day basis is you use those 4 systems to apply those 4 principles. That's what you're doing in actual practice. The wellness score. The wellness score helps patients understand the need to start care and stay under care with proper feedback. In essence, what it is, it's a way for you to pick and choose different things you measure and put it into a report card. That's ultimately what it does. Just like when you went to school, you got letter grades to see how you were doing. Were you a D, a C, an A? Where did you stand? We found letter grades is the best way to communicate to your patients how they're progressing. Why? Because they get it. That's the bottom line. It's just easy for them to understand. Imagine telling your patient they're a D- when they came in. And then you use that as a way to show them the need for care. And over the course of time, you show them how their D or their F or whatever it went to a C, and then it went to a B, and then to an A. You're showing them over time how they're progressing. That's ultimately what the wellness score does. It gives you a tool to show patients how they're progressing. It gives you a tool to do feedback. Now, there's lots of ways of doing feedback. There's many ways of doing it in practice. We're advocating doing this because it's easy for patients to understand, and it's very easy for you to use in the practice. The next is, I got 2 circles there, the care plan calculator for forecasting care. So this is a tool for coming up with a compliant care plan. Now, when it comes to the financial side of things, when you actually build a care plan, when you create the actual legal contract, there's lots of things you could do that are not compliant. We want to make sure you're doing things properly. And I want to mention something, and it's really kind of beyond the scope of today's webinar, and that is there's a new law that started last year called the Patient No Surprises Act. It's a federal law that now requires you to go over finances with patients in writing with a patient in advance to let them know what their financial obligations are going to be. You do what's called a good faith estimate. It's an estimate, basically an estimate to give the patient. Here's what we estimate the cost of your care we recommend is going to be. That's in essence what this does. It gives you a compliant legal document for you to go over with a patient to then go over their financial obligations. It's a great tool for doing forecasting of care. So here's an example of what that looks like. There's multiple pages. It's not just simply something that you fill in with a pencil or pen. It's a professional document that's been created to give you everything you need to compliantly go over a customized care plan with a patient. It's not cookie cutter. You customize it with your services, your fees, your discounts if you're doing discounts. If you're using ChiroHealth USA, it works with ChiroHealth USA. It does everything you need from the standpoint of building out a financial care plan for you, or financial plan for you to then forecast care with your patients. Next is auto debit for frictionless payments. We want to automate payments. So we want to have a system that automatically charges the patients, whether it's a one-time payment, a recurring payment, whether it's weekly or monthly or bi-weekly, whether it's a credit card or a bank account, whatever it is, all things payments, you want to have a system that handles that for you. And that's what our auto debit system does. I mentioned earlier with a pay per visit model, having a patient sign an authorization form for you to have permission to automatically charge their card. This system has that, where you digitally have someone sign that authorization form so that you know you have that signature on file. Or you go ahead and have them sign an authorization form for the recurring auto debit. Everything is digitally signed. A record of it's kept electronically, so this is all paperless for you. Everything works for you from the standpoint of making it frictionless, so that when you wake up in the morning and you have your payments run, it automatically, you get an email saying, hey, you ran so much money per month. What I'm showing you here is a really cool feature. I just want to kind of mention split payments. For those of you seeing family members or like families, 3 or 4 people under one care plan, the system will automatically, if you set it up to do this, split the payment among that family. Here's what I mean. Maybe you're collecting $300 a month for a family of 3, and $100 should be posted to each of their ledgers in your EHR. So instead of it being a $300 payment that goes to one person, the $300 is split among the 3 people, and that $300 and it posts $100 to each of their ledgers. And this example I'm showing you here, it's $60, $60, and $50. So the $170 payment is split among those 3 people, and that's how we'll post properly to that patient ledger in your EHR, assuming you're working with one of our integrated EHRs. Next is our drip education system. That's the email marketing platform for patient frequent contact. So when it comes to frequent contact, we found email is a great way of doing this, that you're regularly sending out emails to educate your patients, to notify them things, to just stay in contact, birthday cards, marketing events, whatever it may be, you're staying in contact with them. Think of our email system sort of like MailChimp or Constant Contact, but it comes pre-built with a complete library of chiropractic content for you to use. So you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to come up with this stuff. Most of our members use a lot of the pre-made content along with creating some of their own stuff as well. Like there's birthday cards in the system, and I know we just released one for Mother's Day for marketing to your mothers for Mother's Day. We just released that campaign for our members to use. So there's lots of stuff in here for you to use to market the practice and to educate your patients and stay in regular frequent contact. Here's an example showing an email that goes out. You can customize like a welcome email that goes out to your patient as an example. Regular content, like I said, with educational, etc. Frequent contact, all kinds of content that is built into the system for you to use out of the box. So going back to the 4 F's, kind of reviewing as we wrap up here: feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. You do all 4 of these things to build that patient retention. For example, Dr. Jason Day, a longtime client of ours, thanks to Cash Practice, my PVA is through the roof. Pediatrics went from 3% to 50%. Serving so many whole families for years now rather than just individuals for weeks. Now, Jason, if you don't know, he's a rock star when it comes to his practice in chiropractic, and we're very thrilled that he's been a client of ours for so many years and benefiting in his practice. Many of you know Dr. Tony Ebel. Many of you maybe don't know that he's a Cash Practice client of ours. He's been a client of ours for well over a decade now. Makes it simple and easy for us and all those that are essential elements to running an impactful and thriving practice. That's why I recommend Cash Practice to every doctor. Seriously, it's incredible the impact that these systems have kind of behind the scenes for these practices to be rocking and rolling. I want to invite you guys to get a demo of Cash Practice. Of course, we want to be working with you. Of course, we would love to be of service to you. Of course, we want to help you in your practice and ultimately help your patients. And I want to motivate you to take action. I want to motivate you to at least take the time to schedule a demo. Schedule a time to speak with one of our members. One of our representatives who would be happy to just simply answer your questions, demonstrate the software to you, see if it's a fit for you. But I want to reward you for those who take action. You see there the date. That's today's date, April 4th. If you're watching this as a recording later, you missed the boat. This is for you that attended live today. April 4th, today, you will save 50% off of sign up if you schedule the demo. Meaning just take action and schedule. You don't have to sign up today. You don't have to even do the demo today. Just simply take action today to schedule a demo. Go to cashpractice.com/demo, and it'll bring you to a calendar where you can book a time to meet with one of our representatives to do a demonstration of our software, answer your questions, see if it's a fit for you. And if it is, we'll be happy to help you. And if it's not, that's fine too. Even if all you do is do those 4 F's and start figuring out a way to do them in your practice on your own, you're going to grow. Simply what we as a company, Cash Practice, do is we give you the systems to make it easy for you to do it immediately. Rather than you going out and building your own email system, we've already got it all done for you. Rather than going out and trying to build your own care plan system, we've already done all the work for you. Rather than you going out and trying to build your own feedback system, we've already done all the work for you. Like, it's systems in place for you to utilize it. Holly, did you want to add anything before we kind of wrap things up and say thank you to everybody?
I do, because everything that we're presenting today, like, we help you increase patient retention and revenue with the 4 F's, right? And we're not a coaching company. We give you systems that you incorporate in your practice so that it's repeatable, right? Systems help create procedures, help create success. So there's all these benefits to having systems in place. And Dr. Bodzin could not have, you talked about in the beginning of the webinar about how you said no more new patients. You could not have done that without us having systems in place. So the things that we're teaching you today in this webinar, these are systems that you can get for as low as $69 a month. So we're not a coaching company, but we give you the tools and the training and the software to help you incorporate this into your practice easily. And I know right now, like, we're heavily focused on speaking to the doctors, the practice owners. You guys and gals know at the end of the day, it's your team that implements these systems. And those are the people who come up to us, Dr. Miles, when we're out speaking. They're coming up to us saying like, oh my gosh, thank you for helping us make our job so much more enjoyable. We're able to focus on patient care. We're able to focus on education. We're able to experience more joy in practice because these systems are helping to automate all of these things in practice so that we can really change lives and we can help our patients get better clinical outcomes. We can have increased revenue and retention. So that's what this is all about. So even if you just have questions, go to cashpractice.com/demo. Sam is on standby. She's like happy to help. So make sure you visit that page.
Thank you so much, Holly, for hosting and organizing all of this. I really appreciate you and appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here today and listen and spend a little bit of time with us today. I hope you learned something. I hope you find value in it. And honestly, I really hope you go out and save the world and save your patients' lives and all of those things. And you give us an opportunity to work with you in that scenario. Holly, I just want to say one last thing to everybody. We keep saying we're not a coaching company. And I say that because it's not like the traditional coaching where you're hiring or coming to seminars. That's not what this is. This is software that you use. We give you training. Let me just clarify that when you come on board, you are trained. You have people here to help you use this. But don't think of us as a traditional coaching. We are a software and training program for you to actually implement into the practice. So with that being said, thanks for your time today, guys. We look forward to being of service to you guys. Get out there and save the world, and you guys have a great one.